Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today we're looking at how modern science is completely forcing us to rewrite the timeline of human history and technological progress. For generations, we've relied on a fairly straightforward textbook narrative of how civilization developed. But what happens when brand new data simply shatters those old assumptions?
Seriously, ask yourself, are you ready to question the established timeline of human history? It's super tempting to look back and just assume we have it all figured out. But the ground beneath our feet, sometimes literally, holds secrets that challenge everything we thought we knew. We're embarking on a pretty fascinating journey today, looking at evidence that suggests our ancestors were far more capable than we ever dared to imagine.
Just to set the stage here, think about the sheer scale of the global archaeological mysteries we still haven't fully solved. You've got the massive Nazca lines in Peru, these giant geometric forms and animals etched into the desert centuries ago for reasons we're still fiercely debating. There's the whole enduring legend of Atlantis, sparking countless theories. And consider Mohenjo-Daro in the Indus Valley. It's a city 4,500 years old with incredibly advanced grid planning and drainage systems, yet its script remains totally undeciphered. This just goes to show how much of our past remains vastly unknown, or honestly, widely misunderstood.
So to make sense of this shifting landscape, we're going to look at three specific case studies today: Doggerland, Göbekli Tepe, and the Baghdad Battery. All right, let's dive right into our first case study, Doggerland, the sunken forest.
If you're not familiar, Doggerland was this massive landscape connecting Britain to mainland Europe, which is now completely submerged beneath the North Sea. The old assumption was always that it was just a barren, icy land bridge for early humans. But recently, researchers from the University of Warwick used sedimentary ancient DNA, or ctDNA, to take a much closer look. And what they found was a total paradigm shift. It wasn't a wasteland at all. It was actually a lush, life-friendly haven. Looking at the very specific DNA evidence pulled from deep marine cores, researchers found genetic traces of temperate trees, we're talking oak, elm, and hazel, thriving more than 16,000 years ago. But here is the biggest shocker. They found traces of Pterocarya, which is a tree related to the walnut. Why is that a big deal? Because scientists firmly believe this tree had vanished from northwestern Europe around 400,000 years prior. Yet here it was, perfectly surviving.
This timeline gives us a brilliant picture of what we call a micro-refugia, basically a small, protected area allowing life to endure the harsh ice age. 16,000 years ago, Doggerland had ancient woodlands supporting wild boar and Mesolithic communities. It was so incredibly resilient, it even survived the massive Storge tsunami around 8,150 years ago, before finally being swallowed by rising sea levels 7,000 years ago. It completely changes how we view human survival in Ice Age Europe.
Moving right along to our second case study, Göbekli Tepe, the very first temple.
So we're leaving the sunken forests of Europe behind and heading over to southeastern Turkey. 11,000. That is how many years ago Göbekli Tepe was built. Radiocarbon dating places its construction right around 9600 BCE. To put that into perspective for you, this monumental complex is literally thousands of years older than Stonehenge or the Great Pyramids. It is widely considered the oldest known temple complex on Earth.
But here is where the mystery really deepens. The site features these massive enclosures made of incredible 20-ton T-shaped limestone pillars, and they're carved with intricate images of lions and scorpions. We also find vast, and I mean vast, quantities of wild animal bones, which points to massive communal feasts. Yet what we absolutely do not find is any evidence of a city. No hearths, no houses, no daily domestic tools whatsoever. It was definitely a gathering place, but it was not a permanent home.
And this brilliantly illustrates our second major paradigm shift. For decades, the textbook narrative was that humans invented farming, we settled down, and then, because we finally had some free time, we invented religion and built temples. Well, Göbekli Tepe flips this entirely upside down. Now, a lot of archaeologists argue that the immense desire to build these massive religious monuments actually came first. The sheer necessity to feed a huge mobilized workforce of hunter-gatherers is what likely spurred the invention of agriculture. Religion, it seems, may have actually birthed farming. How wild is that?
Okay, let's jump into our third and final case study, the Baghdad Battery. Did ancient people have electricity?
For this one, we're traveling to present-day Iraq, just outside ancient Ctesiphon, to look at a 2,000-year-old Parthian artifact that might completely rewrite the history of technology. Notice its highly specific utilitarian design here. Discovered in 1936, it basically consists of a bright yellow, unglazed clay jar. Inside, held really fast by a stopper of asphalt, is a copper cylinder. And inside that, also isolated by asphalt, is a heavily oxidized iron rod. The copper tube is even soldered closed at the very bottom. It is an incredibly precise arrangement.
Naturally, this precise design has led to a fierce, decades-long historical debate. On one side, you have many mainstream archaeologists arguing it was simply a protective container for magic spells or sacred scrolls. They point to similar jars found nearby that held papyrus, and they rightfully note that there are absolutely no wires or electroplated objects from this era. But on the flip side, some researchers argue that if you add an acidic liquid, like vinegar or grape juice, to that inner copper tube, the iron and copper act exactly as a galvanic cell, generating a weak electrical current.
Now, previous experiments trying to prove the battery theory only managed to generate a super feeble current. But a recent experiment by researcher Alexander Bases introduced a massive breakthrough by looking at the parts everyone else kind of ignored. Bases realized the jar is made of porous, unglazed clay, and the copper tube was soldered with a tin alloy. By adding a caustic solution, like lye, he proved the device actually contains a hidden outer cell. The porous ceramic, the tin solder, and the lye essentially act together as an ancient aqueous tin-air battery, drawing oxygen right through the clay.
So the absolutely crucial point is this. When you combine the inner iron-copper cell with this newly recognized outer tin-air cell, the Baghdad battery generates over 1.4 volts of electricity, and that is a real game-changer. 1.4 volts is absolutely enough power to drive highly visible, useful electrochemical reactions. It can electroplate metals, etch designs, or even electrolyze water in a hydrogen and oxygen gas. Whether they understood the electrons moving or simply knew the practical recipe for these quote-unquote magical reactions, the device literally had the mechanical capability to do it. We've seen today how ancient DNA has revived sunken forests, how massive stones have upended the origins of agriculture, and how a clay jar might just hold the earliest secrets of electrochemistry. It shows us that history is never, ever truly settled. So I'm going to leave you with this final thought. With millions of artifacts still buried beneath the earth and massive ancient landscapes still hidden beneath the waves, which chapter of human history are we going to have to rewrite tomorrow? Keep questioning, keep learning, and thank you so much for joining me on this explainer.